Kamala Harris is apparently going after Joe Biden in her new book. The Hill reports Harris suggests in her upcoming book that former President Biden's decision to run for re-election last year amounted to recklessness. Quote, "And of all the people in the White House, I was in the worst position to make the case that he should drop out," Harris said in an excerpt for 107 Days, published early Wednesday by The Atlantic. Quote, "I knew it would come off to him as incredibly self-serving if I advised him not to run. He would see it as naked ambition, perhaps as poisonous disloyalty, even if my only message was, don't let the other guy win." Yeah, she was in a tough position where it's like, it would just seem so self-serving, so transparently self-serving, and probably greedy of her to be like, oh yeah, now I agree with some of your critics that after that debate, you need to drop out, sir. He would be like, what the hell, Jack, what are you talking about? Quote, "It's Joe and Jill's decision," we all said, like a mantra, as if we'd all been hypnotized. Was it grace or was it recklessness? In retrospect, I think it was recklessness, she added. The stakes were simply too high. This wasn't a choice that should have been left to an individual's ego, an individual's ambition. It should have been more than a personal decision. The former vice president ran a short presidential campaign last year after Biden withdrew from the race following a dismal debate that inflamed questions about his age. Harris went on to lose the election to Trump. Harris announced last month that she would go on a book tour involving 15 cities, including the UK and Canada, for 107 days. The book, which outlines her short-lived White House bid, is expected to go on sale September 23rd. Quote, "Many people want to spin up a narrative of some big conspiracy at the White House to hide Joe Biden's infirmity. Here is the truth as I lived it," she said in the excerpt. Joe Biden was a smart guy with long experience and deep conviction, able to discharge the duties of president. Quote, "On his worst day, he was more deeply knowledgeable, more capable of exercising judgment, and far more compassionate than Donald Trump on his best. But at 81, Joe got tired," Harris continued. "That's when his age showed in physical and verbal stumbles." Yeah, so I mean, I agree that he's got a lot more knowledge, especially on foreign policy and just the way the country works. The guy has been in the Senate since 1973. The guy had been in the Senate since 1973 and had been vice president. So obviously he's got a lot more of the qualifications than Trump. The difference is Trump just, comes off more energetic, and he may well have dementia. He may well have some sort of terminal condition in a similar way to Biden, but he comes off as someone who's just full of bravado, and Biden comes off very meek and, makes frequent gaffes like that are just, not super full of energy. And whereas Trump makes gaffes with full confidence and full energy. So it's like, it's a great way of sort of masking the fact that his mind is slipping in some ways too. She added, quote, "I don't think it's any surprise that the debate debacle happened right after 2 back-to-back trips to Europe and a flight to the West Coast for a Hollywood fundraiser." Yeah, and apparently he got a cold, although I don't think you can really blame the cold for everything. The comments come just months after leaked audio from an interview between Biden and special counsel Robert Hur appeared to show the former president's memory lapses and lack of focus. The audio obtained by Axios brought his mental health back to the spotlight more than 100 days after Trump took office. The Hill has reached out to the White House and the office of Biden and First Lady Jill Biden to comment. But yeah, the Robert Hur thing was a really bad look, especially because they got really defensive over that. He said, he brought up Beau when it was actually Joe Biden who brought up Beau in the interview. So it made him look really bad. And then, that pales in comparison to the presidential debate that Biden had with Trump, where of course Trump made himself look horrible, but Biden made himself look not only pretty bad, but also incapable of spouting a coherent thought, saying stuff like, "We finally beat Medicare." So I think Kamala Harris is right about this, but it's Monday morning quarterbacking, really. What can you say? She was in no position to try and stop him, so she had to just be like, let's go Joe, be a huge cheerleader for him. I remember she was like swooning over him at the 4th of July event back in 2024, which was it came after the debate, and she was like, "The President Joe Biden," she was definitely compensating for something there, where it's like, she's like recognizes a bunch of people wanting to drop out of the race. And so she's like, "Yeah, you go, you're so special." But secretly she's kind of like, "Oh, do you really have to keep running, dude? Do you really have to keep running? Should you have really run in the first place?" He launched his campaign in 2023, well before the presidential debate. And at that point, there were some questions, but it wasn't quite as obvious. This was before the Hur report and all that. But yeah, Good point on Kamala Harris's part. I do think it was reckless. I do think it was reckless because I think if he hadn't run, then the Democrats have a better shot. They have an open primary. Although if they have an open primary, I think it's less likely that Kamala Harris wins the nomination too. So it's kind of interesting. She got this sweet spot where he stays in, and they don't really have time to do an open primary before the Democratic National Convention, and so she just gets the nomination. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, or subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. This is the more the merrier, and I look forward to speaking to you in my next video.